Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Rejoicing, hallelujah. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. Shalom, Ryan. So hope that was a good introductory song. Happy Sabbath to everybody. Shalom, Jeremy and Ryan. So where are we here? We're counting Omer number 7. That's pretty straightforward and simple. Sabbath is 7. And I got it all marked down on the calendar. That's probably backwards for you. But we started counting April the 17th, which was last Sunday. And we got cut off. We were trying to do a First Fruits live stream and it was getting interrupted every few seconds, so let me know if the stream isn't working today. Yah forbid. But so that was day 1, Sunday. We started counting and I got it numbered off here on the calendar. And today we came into number 7. There we got Sabbath. We gotta learn how to count 7 sevens. And we're on April the 23rd, and we'll have 1, 2 Sabbaths, 3 Sabbaths, 4 Sabbaths, 5 Sabbaths. Then to month 3, 6 Sabbaths, 7 Sabbaths, that's 49. And then number 50 will be Sunday, June the 5th, Feast of Weeks. And our weeks will be out. And so that's what we're working up to. And we've discussed a little bit about that. I realized that I think since we count a little differently, we kept Passover April 5th, April 5th, and Feast of Unleavened Bread April the 6th. But since we wait until we have a Sabbath outside of Feast of Unleavened Bread, rather than what a lot of people will choose the Sabbath during the Feast of Unleavened Bread to begin their counting, we wait until we get to a Sabbath outside, the first Sabbath outside of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then we begin counting on the morrow after that. And I realized that, considering that, there are some who kept Passover and they're actually counting the Omer the same as us, even though they just kept Passover last week, I suppose it would be. But their Omer count, if they start counting after the Sabbath during their Feast of Unleavened Bread, then those people would be on the same Omer count as us. So, and maybe some of them will join in and we'll be able to dwell in unity. So we're counting the Omer. We're trying to learn more about what that means. We went over the Torah of the first fruits last Sabbath, and then again, Sunday got messed up. So I was going to go over the other way of how they, because there's kind of 2 different major ways. Well, really there may even be 3 major ways, but there's another way that I was going to go over it, but now I'm not going to go over it, because it seemed as Yah said, I showed you the calendar, so stick with that. And so I'm not going to be teaching the other version, other than I can mention it. But if people want to learn the other version, that Michael Rood goes over, then they can either get this book or go to many other platforms which are still teaching that version of the calendar and that version of the counting of the Omer. But it makes sense when you read Leviticus 23. It talks about the what? The Omer Reshit. The Omer Reshit. So we're gonna remind ourselves of our Hebrew words today for Shabbat. So we're gonna freshen up our minds. Even I wasn't able to remember them all by memory. I had to go back over the Hebrew words. Well, actually, it was the Greek word I forgot. I did remember the Hebrew words. We're gonna go back over that today. The Omer Reshit, which is the first fruits sheaf, the first sheaf. And that's like Bereshit, in the beginning, The Omer Reshit, it says that you will, after the Sabbath, you'll bring in a Omer, wave sheaf, a wave Omer, an Omer Reshit. It doesn't specify what Sabbath. That's why there's so much debate. It just says after the Sabbath. So it makes sense that first you would get outside of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and then you would have a Sabbath, and then you would begin counting on the morrow. Why does that make sense? Well, to me it makes sense because, you know, what is the likelihood that if they're all on a pilgrimage feast, going to a celebration in Yerushalayim, they're not going to be working. They're not going to be gathering anything, any first fruits. It makes more sense that they waited till they got outside of the major feast day, the major 7 days pilgrimage feast, and they have some time to get back home, and now they're working again. So that does make sense, that it's the Sabbath following the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Then you're going to have 7 full weeks. You wouldn't have, if you began during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you would kind of had a partial work week anyway. So it makes sense getting out of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, beginning counting after the first Sabbath after that, and then we get 7 full weeks. So the 26th day of the first month, we began counting. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So every Saturday is going to be a multiple of 7. We can do that math, Ryan, can't we? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49. That's pretty easy because that's touchdown numbers. I had to get pretty good at touchdown numbers back when I used to play those football video games. So easy to count by 7s. So that makes all good sense. Sharp. Thanks, Ryan. That does make 100% sense. Agree. Oh, praise Yah, Windfeather, and love you as well. Everyone's probably still waking up. I'm kind of still waking up. I want to begin in Psalm 126. Read a psalm to wake us up. When Yahweh turned again at the captivity of Zion, we were like them that dream. Then was our mouth filled with laughter and our tongue with singing. Then said they among the heathen, Yahweh has done great things for them. Yahweh has done great things for us, whereof we are glad. Turn again at our captivity, O Yahweh, as the streams in the Negev. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. He that goes forth and weeps, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. So there we read about bringing in the sheaves. We started out with that song, bringing in the sheaves. We will come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. And that song was inspired by this Psalms 126, so it says. So, but coming with joy as we gather the Omers. That's what we're doing now. We rendered a first fruit last Sunday. We gave a first fruit to Yahweh. Well, hopefully we did. If we did it, we're still learning. We're still learning. But we gave of the first fruit to Yahweh. And now we continue gleaning. We continue gathering up those Omers. So this word, this is another Hebrew word. This Hebrew word, Sheafs. And this is a similar word, but this isn't the word Omer. This sheaf is the word aluma. Let me write that in, because I'm writing in some of these Hebrew words directly into my scriptures. That'll help me the next time down the road. Aluma. Aluma. That's the Hebrew word here. Alumim. Alumim. Sheaves, plural. Alumim. So this is a different type of sheaf in the Hebrew from the Hebrew word Omer. And this one occurs just a couple times. I think it was 5 occurrences of this word aluma. But as we saw, it said in Psalm 126, we were like them that dream. And so I want to look at an example of this Hebrew word being used, aluma, and it is in a dream. And it's Joseph's dream. An appropriate person, Joseph. In Genesis 37, he has a dream about what? Sheafs. Joseph 37. No. Genesis 37, it says, verse 1, and Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding at the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with at the sons of Bilhah, and with at the sons of Zilpah, his father's women. And Joseph brought at unto his father their evil report. Now Yasharel loved at Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. Now here comes the dream of the sheafs. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves, alumim, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my aluma, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obeisance to my sheaf, to my aluma. And his brethren said to him, shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him, and said unto him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to you to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed at the saying. So that was Genesis 37, 1 through 11. And we see this example of sheaves representing people. So we know that Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, 20 to 23 tells us that Messiah is the first fruits sheaf. So we see how this first fruits represents people. We went over that as well, because you had the first fruits of Achaia, the first fruits of them that believe, the first fruits converts, mentioned in 1 Corinthians 16:15 and in Romans 16:5. There was first fruits of them that believed. And so that's what we're working to, just as the song, spiritually speaking. If we're not literally going out into the grain fields and cleaning these omers, spiritually, we want to see the first fruits of them that believe. We want to gather sheaves of people, omers, and do this harvest the way that, and we want to teach it that the way that it was taught. Doesn't it make much more sense when we have it all in context? It makes sense that the gospel of the kingdom would connect directly to all the Most High's holy days. Helps us understand much better the processes of what we're doing. Praise Yah for the Torah, the instruction. So that's the Hebrew word aluma in Genesis. And what else is significant about Yosef? Well, Yosef gets the birthright. He's the firstborn. Why? Because Reuben lost the firstborn birthright because he went in unto his father's mother. So Reuben loses the birthright, and it goes unto the tribe of Yosef. Yosef gets the birthright. He's the firstborn. He gets the birthright. Another first fruits is the firstborn. We saw that as we read, and maybe we didn't get through all of it. Maybe you didn't hear it when I read some of this stuff before, but I think I did read this last Sabbath, how the firstborn of many creatures. So Messiah, of course, being the firstborn, the only begotten of the Father. Again, we see a connection to the first fruits in regards to the firstborn among many brethren. The firstborn among many brethren. So a sheaf or an Omer or an aluma representing people. One person and then many brethren associated with that. So Yosef, he's the firstborn, and of course Hosea, I think 11:1, I believe it is, gives us the prophecy that it says, "Out of Egypt will I call my firstborn." We already did that too. We already did that. Coming out of Egypt, the firstborn were slain, but the firstborn of Israel is preserved and protected and passed over. So we were passed over. The firstborn of Israel was called out of Egypt, out of slavery, out of bondage, and we're going into freedom. We're counting up to the days of going into freedom when we get the Torah, the commandments, the very thing that can keep us in freedom, out of the slavery of sin, is knowing what the definition of sin is, the commandments. And that's what they were doing when they were gathering manna out in the wilderness. Remember, we went over, they were gathering Omers. In fact, let's go ahead and go to this passage next. In Exodus chapter 16. Exodus chapter 16. So, much the same as we just came out of slavery, out of bondage, and the firstborn was passed over. Of course, what had to happen? The firstborn of the father was smitten, was actually not passed over, but Abraham's firstborn, Isaac, was passed over, and a lamb was provided. So, Exodus 16, they've come out of Egypt, they've been delivered out of slavery, out of Pharaoh's hands, and they're out in the wilderness. They're out in the wilderness, and we're going to see in Exodus chapter 16 the first instance of the Omer. The first time the Hebrew word Omer is mentioned. It's a unique word. The King James Bible actually just transliterates it and uses the word Omer. So what are our Hebrew words that we've gone over? In the Greek, it was aparche, Ap Arche, which Arche is similar to archangel. It means ruler. Arche. Ap Arche means in Greek the beginning of a sacrifice. So it has to do with a sacrifice as well, which Messiah was a sacrifice. The first fruit, the earliest crop of the year. Metaphorically, earliest converts in a district. A sacrifice or a gift. It can be a sacrifice or a gift, the first fruits. So that's in the New Testament. In the Greek, we have this word ap arche. On top of that, what did we go over? We went over the bikurim first fruits, and Yom HaBikurim, which most of anyone who's been in the Hebrew roots very long at all, you've heard about Yom HaBikurim, Day of the First Fruits. We saw that when they began counting, it actually doesn't call that first day Yom HaBikurim. We see that throughout Scripture, it actually calls Shavuot Yom HaBikurim. Well, that's another day of first fruits in Scripture. Shavuot, when we get to that 50th day of counting, that's a day of first fruits. That's a gleaning of the wheat harvest. Whereas in Israel, now we're doing the barley harvest. Shabbat Shalom, Amandi Joe. Praise Yah. I'm very grateful to have you with us. So, Bikurim, that's the Hebrew word for first fruits. There's a secondary word for first fruits, Reshit. Reshit. And we went over all those. Reshit is like Bereshit, in the beginning. Reshit, first, beginning, head, chief. Reshit means first fruits. Or in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, Bereshit. Reshit comes from Rosh, meaning head. So, but it's plural, Reshit, your firsts, first stuff, first multiples, your firsts. Reshit. Rosh. Similar to how we have our heads of our year, or heads of our months, rather, which represents on the calendar again, Yah's Enoch calendar. If you go to Yah's Enoch calendar on Facebook, you'll see this. But you have 4 divisions of the seasons. You have your Rosh Chodashim. Rosh Chodesh. Chodesh is month. Your heads of your months, or your heads of your seasons. Rosh, head, first, chief. And of course, we know that to be connected to the solstices and the equinox. The solstices and the equinoxes. Spring equinox, which we just passed, celebrated the new year in the month of Aviv. And then the fall equinox, where we'll begin to celebrate the 7th month and the fall feasts. And then, of course, you have the solstices, which you have your longest day of the year, and in the winter time you have your shortest day of the year. So we have our Rosh Chodashim, which, you know, as we've studied, doesn't seem to have anything to do with the moon. Does it? Rosh Chodashim? Well, the 2 Hebrew words for moon, not that we're getting onto this subject, but I found out there is a second word in Hebrew for moon. There's at least 2 words in Scripture, and it's Lebana or Levana. Levana. I have a relative named Levana. Well, that in Hebrew is actually moon. And then you have Yareach, or Yarach. That's the Hebrew word for moon. It doesn't mean the same thing as Chodesh, month. So Chodesh isn't new moon. It doesn't say new Yarech or new moon. It just says head of your month. Head of your months. Rosh Chadashim. Head. So Rosh is head. Some people say Rosh Hashanah. The Jews say Rosh Hashanah. They celebrate that in the 7th month. So Yareach, and Levana, the two Hebrew words for moon, but it's not the same as Chodeshim. So when we have our heads of our months, we're referring to, on our calendar, the 4 seasonal days that happen near or around the equinoxes and the solstices. So that helps us understand our calendar. Of course, we have 4 beautiful seasons, which are spring, summer, fall, and winter. And we just finished up the month of Aviv, and we're in the 2nd month now. So that's the word Reshit. We gathered our Omer Reshit, and we begin counting. We wave that Omer Reshit, give it to the Father, in hopes of Him blessing our harvest time. And what? That's all the Hebrew words. So where was Omer, this Omer Reshit, that's mentioned in Leviticus 23 for all our feast days, all our Moedim appointed times? What is Omer? Well, the first time that Omer is mentioned is in Exodus chapter 16. So let's read that. Let's try to understand the Hebrew word Omer. Isn't it wonderful trying to learn these Hebrew words? And I think this is going to help us. The first time we see the Hebrew word Omer, Exodus 16. And they took their journey from Elim, and all the assembly of the children of Yasharel came unto the wilderness of Zin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month, after their departing out of the land of Mitzrayim. So they came out on the 1st month, on the 15th day. They left. The firstborn was slain. They left on the 15th, which is the high feast of unleavened bread. And now we're a month later. We're on the 15th day of the 2nd month. They've been wandering and fleeing for a month's time in Exodus 16. And what are we going to find? And which, by the way, very interestingly about our calendar, the way we count the Omer, the Sabbath after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, it's always going to land us on the 15th day of the 3rd month. My son is calling. You know, he never calls. He never answers my calls. But he wants to call during my live streams, of course. I'm gonna have to call him back because this is the Sabbath. Hopefully I'll be able to get a hold of him. Yes, so interestingly, we have Shavuot. There's 3 high feast days. Of course, the Torah tells us specifically that the first high feast of the year, Feast of Unleavened Bread, falls on the 15th day of the 1st month. It tells us that the 3rd and final high feast day falls on the 15th day of the 7th month. And for whatever reason, it doesn't tell us in the Torah that the feast of Shavuot falls on the 15th day of the 3rd month, but we glean that from out of the Dead Sea Scrolls calendar that they were keeping. They had it nailed down to the 15th day of the 3rd month, which meant they were beginning their counting the Omer on the 26th day of the 1st month, which is after the first Sabbath, following the first Sabbath, after they get out of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Makes sense, you know, when you're trying to do a feast, and it's a lot of work to put together and celebrate Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread, to pile on top of that the Feast of First Fruits all in there and have to glean a sheaf, it makes a lot more sense that they got done with Feast of Unleavened Bread and they got outside of that feast, and then they started counting the Sabbath after that feast. It makes a lot of good sense. And so that gives us those 15th days of their respective months. The 3 high Sabbaths, high holy days, all fall on the 15th. Easy to remember because the days are fixed on the beautiful 364-day calendar, which is divisible by 7. 364 divided by 7 is 52 perfect weeks. So we're always counting 7s. So it's not much of a big deal to count these Omers, these 7 sevens. Shalom, Wendy Russell is with us. Had to get back to their homes, fields after the feast to reap the barley harvest. Exactly. And when you look at it that way, you almost can't unsee it. Let's continue reading in Exodus 16. And the whole assembly of the children of Yasharel murmured against Moshe and Aharon in the wilderness. And the children of Yasharel said unto them, Would to Elohim we had died by the hand of Yahweh in the land of Mitzrayim, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill at this whole assembly with hunger. Then said Yahweh unto Moshe, Behold, I will rain bread from the heavens for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them, whether they will walk in my Torah or no. So we see the Torah before they received the Torah. They haven't received the commandments because the commandments won't come until chapter 20 in the 3rd month. We're only in the 2nd month. We see the Torah still in existence before that. Even if they hadn't been made accountable to it, it still existed. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare at that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. So here we see they would gather an extra amount on the 6th day and rest on the 7th. So we see the Sabbath day existed before Mount Sinai, because so many people want to say, well, remember the Sabbath day was only for Israel. It was only under the commandments of Moses at Mount Sinai, and nobody had to keep the Sabbath before that. No, the Sabbath day goes back to creation, and it existed before they even received the commandments at Mount Sinai, which we're patiently waiting for Shavuot. And Moshe and Aharon said unto all the children of Yasharel at evening, Then ye shall know that Yahweh has brought you out from the land of Mitzrayim. And in the morning, then ye shall see at the glory of Yahweh, for that he hears at your murmurings against Yahuwah? And what are we that ye murmur against us? And Moshe said, This shall be when Yahuwah shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, for that Yahuwah hears your murmurings, which ye murmur against him. And what are we? At your murmurings are not against us, but against Yahuwah. And Moshe spoke unto El Aharon, Say unto all the assembly of the children of Yasharel, Come near before Yahuwah, for he has heard at your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aharon spoke unto the whole assembly of the children of Yasharel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of Yahuwah appeared in the cloud. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, I have heard at the murmurings of the children of Yasharel. Speak unto them, saying, At evening ye shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread. And ye shall know that I am Yahuwah Elohecum. And it came to pass that at evening the quails came up and covered at the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Yasharel saw it, they said one to another, It is manna, for they knew not what it was. And Moshe said unto them, This is the bread which Yahuwah has given you to eat. So the bread that came down from heaven, manna meaning, what is it? And Yahusha said, I am the bread that came down from heaven. So Yahusha, Messiah, he fulfills this as well. This is the thing which Yahuwah has commanded, gather of it every man according to his eating, and Omer for every man. There's the Hebrew word, and Omer. They were to gather an Omer for every man. An Omer representing a man, again, essentially. An Omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which are in his tents. So that is our first occurrence of the word Omer, when we understand counting the Omer. This is the first time we see it. So it fits perfectly because they came out of Egypt. They kept the Passover. Then they keep unleavened bread for 7 days. They eat unleavened bread. And then what? Then they're gathering Omers. They gather the first fruits and they're gathering Omers, and they're counting up until they but they receive the 10 Commandments and the Torah at Mount Sinai in the 3rd month. That's what they're doing, and that's what we're doing now. We're gathering Omers. We're remembering this. Of course, in the New Testament, we know that Messiah was the Passover lamb. We're delivered into freedom because of him. Forgiveness of sin. And then what? Well, we're going to read a little bit about that. But of course, that leads up to Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, when the outpouring of the Ruach HaKodesh would take place in the 3rd month at Shavuot, reflecting what already took place. History repeating itself, the shadows of things to come. And the children of Yasharel did so, and gathered some more, some less. And when they did meet it with an Omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. So here we see they had just the right amount. So gathering an Omer, it's just the right amount. It has to do with trusting Yah that he will give us just the right portion, just the right amount. That's what took place here in this first. It seems they tried to measure it, and Omer might have been probably some kind of measuring, maybe device. And, you know, a luma is a sheaf that's bound. It's bound up. It comes from the word to bind. So it basically means a binding. That's what a luma means. It would be similar to us with a bale of hay, a hay bale that we have today, and you tie it up with the string and the twine. You have a bale of hay. That's what a sheaf is. That's essentially what a sheaf is. I grew up in Amish country where they still have those real pretty looking sheafs that they set all throughout their field, just the same way that you would picture it from the Bible, biblical days. They set out those pretty looking sheafs out in their fields, not the ugly hay bales that the machines make. The pretty looking ones. Well, that's what we're talking about here. Kind of a hay bale. And they had no lack. They had just the right amount. That's what this is representative of. We give the first fruits to him, and we trust him to give us the perfect portion, the perfect amount. And Moshe said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moshe, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moshe was wroth with them. So anything that they had extra, they couldn't try to hang on to it. They couldn't try to keep it till the next morning. It would go bad. They would only get exactly what they needed. Yahweh would provide only the exact amount that was required for their needs, for their hunger. No more, no less. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. So again, there we see the word Omer and Omer, 2 omers per man on the 6th day. That would be Friday, because they wouldn't gather it on the Sabbath day. Yahweh again provides the exact correct amount. And all the rulers of the assembly came and told Moshe. And he said unto them, this is that which Yahweh has said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Shabbat unto Yahweh. Et bake that which ye will bake today, and et seethe that ye will seethe, and at that which remains over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. They would prepare the day before, everything that they needed to prepare the day before Shabbat, and they laid it up till the morning as Moshe bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. So he's really teaching them, and you know, sadly, we're still learning this today amongst believers, still trying to learn to keep the Sabbath day holy. Well, he gave them an unforgettable lesson here, that it would go bad the next morning except for the holy Shabbat. It would preserve an extra day, saying, keep the Sabbath day holy. And Moshe said, eat that today, for today is a Shabbat unto Yahweh. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Shabbat, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather, and they found none. There wasn't any on the Sabbath. It didn't even appear. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, How long refuse ye to guard my commandments and my Torah, or instruction? See, for that Yahweh has given you the Shabbat, therefore he gives you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place, let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. Now, just a good precedent that we avoid going out of our place as much as possible. We don't want to be going on big time journeys on Shabbat. We want to remain in our place and rest and enjoy the blessed Sabbath. So the people rested on the 7th day, and the house of Yasharel called at the name thereof manna. And it was like coriander seed white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And Moshe said, This is the thing which Yahweh commands. Fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations. This is something to remember. They actually would keep an omer of this manna, this bread that came down, that they may see at the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Mitzrayim. I believe this to absolutely be our understanding of counting the Omer, is we're out in the wilderness, we're looking up forward to an important event, we're following instruction, we're keeping the Sabbath, we want to go into freedom with the Torah and the law and the commandments and the Ruach HaKodesh that teaches us the law, teaches us how to do. We have to have the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, or we're going to do it according to the letter of the law rather than the Ruach, the Spirit of the law. We're not going to understand. And Moshe said unto El-Aharon, Take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before Yahweh, to be kept for your generations. As Yahweh commanded Moshe, so Aharon laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Yasharel did eat manna 40 years, until they came to the land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came unto the borders of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is what? An omer is the 10th part of an ephah. So there we see it's directly connected to a 10th or a tithe. So an omer it's 10% of an ephah or ephah. Another Hebrew word, ephah, that is just a measure of grain. It would be maybe today how you have some of the machines make a big, huge, if you've ever seen those big, huge bales the machines make, and then you see the little small bales that you can kind of pick up yourself and throw it into the hayloft. I used to have to do that from time to time. Well, it was a 10th. An omer was literally a 10th. So we give a omer, or a 10th, of the first fruits to Yahweh, and then we continue gathering these omers and counting and gleaning the harvest with joy. Praise Yah. So there we see an omer directly connected to a 10th. So the Omer Reshit, that's what Leviticus 23 tells us about the first of our omers, our first omer. We give that to Yah. So that's what we did last Sunday to the best of our ability, even though the stream was cut off. Where is the next time that we see this word omer? It's in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 19. Deuteronomy 24:19. So we see it in Exodus 16, the Omer. We see it in Leviticus 23 when it's describing to us the biblical feast days, all the Moedim, the appointments. And then we see it the next time in Deuteronomy 24:19, and this has directly to do with how we treat others. That's what Deuteronomy chapter 24 is. It's just a chapter of how we treat our fellow man and our brethren. It doesn't have anything to do with the feast days or the Sabbaths, but it has the word Omer. It says, when you cut down your harvest in your field and have forgotten a sheaf, you've forgotten an Omer. One of those little 10% of an ephah. Got some loud traffic going by or something here. 10% of an ephah, and have forgot a sheaf in the field, you shall not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, that Yahweh Eloheka may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat your olive tree, you shall not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. And you shall remember that you were a bondman in the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt. Therefore I command you to do at this thing. So we see that if you forget an Omer behind you when you're gleaning, you leave that tithe. That tithe goes to the fatherless and the widow and the poor person and the strangers. Praise Yah, that He commands us to give a tenth, give a tithe, give an Omer to the poor person and the stranger. And when is the next time then we see this Hebrew word Omer mentioned? Well, it's not until a story about a stranger, Ruth, in the book of Ruth. That'll be the next time you'll see this Hebrew word Omer, and she's out gathering an Omer of the field of Boaz, and she is a stranger, and the kinsman redeemer will redeem her, and she'll be able to graft into the family and then even be in the royal line that would lead up to Messiah, the royal lineage. So praise Yah for that story. And let's see. From there, we finish up what we needed to learn out of the Torah about the sheaf and counting the Omer. And now we're going to go into this book, and we're going to see what were the appearances that Messiah was doing around this time, around the counting of the Omer, making appearances to the disciples. Yes, hallelujah. That blessings to you as well, Kendall. A genuine soul. Praise Yah for that. Lindsay, Shabbat Shalom. Praise Yah for His blessings. Omer, enough for the day. Our daily bread, Wendy Russell says. Amen. Daily bread, that's very true. That we get just the portion that we need. So we've read over Te Miaton Sabbaton, the one of the Sabbaths, when he resurrected. We've gone over all that. And whereas in one instance, actually with him, he's going to have Wednesday to Sunday for the death, burial, and resurrection. We have Tuesday to Saturday for the death, burial, and resurrection. But in this book, it's Wednesday to Sunday he does. Te Miaton Sabbaton. We went over all that. The one of the Sabbaths, literally. And in the other instance we had, and of course it was early, the one of the Sabbaths. That makes sense because there was 3 Sabbaths in 1 week. So which Sabbath? One of the Sabbaths. There was 3 of them in that week. And then we also have early prote of the Sabbath. First of the Sabbath. That's similar to Reshit, first. So it's described as one early one of the Sabbaths and early first of the Sabbath, prote. We see both of those constructions in the Greek describing the day that he resurrected. So, and they could have said one day of the Sabbath or the first day of the Sabbath, but they didn't say that. They didn't say te mia hemera or te prote hemera, hemera being the word for day. They just said first of the Sabbath. They have a word for day. Why didn't they say? So, learning to count. That's part of it. Is he wants us to learn how to count. That's why we have to count the Omer. Shalom, Francesca. So he resurrects Te Miaton Sabbaton. That's where we are. And I'm picking up in Luke 24:9. It's the 18th day of the first month. The women tell the disciples, but they are not believed. The women returned from the sepulchre and told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. It was Miriam of Migdal and Yaana, and Miriam, the mother of Jacob, and other women who were with them, who told these things to the apostles, but their words seemed to them as idle tales. They did not believe them. And then he says that the next verse, Luke 24:12, some technical stuff. He says it wasn't in the original Greek manuscripts. And he seems to think that it would make a contradiction. So he says this verse shouldn't be there. Then arose Kepha and ran to the sepulchre, and stooping down, he beheld the linen clothes laid by themselves, and departed, wondering in himself at that which was come to pass. So he says that verse wasn't in the original manuscripts, and he gives some technical texts that he refers to that it wasn't there. Now we go to Yahusha appears to 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. Same day of the Te Miaton Sabbaton, but same day, Mark 16:12. After that, Yahusha appeared in another form to 2 of them as they walked from Jerusalem and went into the country. When they returned and reported it to the others, they did not believe them. That was Mark 16:12. Now we have Luke 24:13. Back to Luke. 2 of the disciples left Jerusalem that same day for a village called Emmaus, we know about the Apostle Paul and the Emmaus Road experience. Well, here's two disciples that they're going to have an Emmaus experience where, the same as Paul, they're blinded, which was a journey of about 60 stadion. They talked together about all these things that had happened. It sounds that maybe possibly that mentions this journey because it's the Sabbath day, and they did have a certain amount that they could journey. Let's see. They talked together about all these things that had happened. While they communed together and reasoned, Yahusha himself drew near and walked with them, but their eyes were blinded so that they would not recognize him. So they were blinded, and the Emmaus experience, the same as Paul the Apostle was blinded by a bright light with his experience. He said to them, "What manner of communication is this that you are having one with another as you walk? Why are you so sad?" One of them, whose name was Clopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know about the things that have come to pass there in these past few days?" He said to them, "What things?" They said to him, "Concerning Yahusha of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before Yahweh and all the people, how the ruling Kohanim, or priests, and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and have crucified him. But we trusted that he would have been the one who would have redeemed Israel, and beside all this, today is the third day since these things were done. Yes, and certain women who were also of our company, which were at the sepulchre early this morning, made us astonished when they did not find his body. They returned from the sepulchre and said that they had also seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Certain of those who were staying with us also went to the sepulchre and found it even as the women had said, but they did not see him." And remember, the guards were paid off to tell a story that the disciples stole the body, but these two disciples have heard of it. Then he said to them, "O fools and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken, ought not Messiah to have suffered all these things of which you have just spoken, and then to enter into his glory?" Then, beginning at Moshe and all the prophets, he expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. They drew near to the village to which they were going, and Yahusha made as though he would have gone further, but they constrained him. "Please abide with us, and it is almost evening, and the day is far spent." Then he went in to tarry with them. As he sat at dinner with them, he took unleavened bread, blessed Yahweh, and he supplies the word unleavened, but they were still in the feast of unleavened bread, so it had to be unleavened bread. Blessed Yahweh and broke the bread and gave it to them. Immediately their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished out of their sight. They said one to another, "Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us in the way and opened the scriptures to us?" Then they arose immediately and returned to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 gathered together, and those who were with them, who reported, "The Master has risen indeed and has appeared to Shimon." Then the two disciples told the things that transpired while they walked along the way to Emmaus, and how he was recognized by them in the breaking of bread. So, let's see here. He says that a stadion is equal to 600 feet. Emmaus is approximately 7 miles outside of the old city of Jerusalem. And then he says also in regards to the third day since, because they mentioned it's been the third day since all of this took place. The third day since it's the Greek word apa, is translated as since, but it literally means separated from the whole. In other words, there are 3 days separating us from the event of the crucifixion, which transpired on a Wednesday, he says. I do the Tuesday, because that's when the Dead Sea Scrolls pins it, the Passover, always to Tuesday. But he says a Wednesday. According to the Greek, this is the 4th day after the crucifixion. So this is the 4th day. It's not, they're not on the 3rd day. They're actually on the 4th day. So the Greek construction makes that more clear, but when that's translated into English, you don't see it as clearly. But there are 3 days separating them since he was crucified. Let's see. And then he talks about the artos, which we talked about. He says that's the standard Greek word for leavened bread, and it should have been adzumon. And we've talked about that. I'm not going to mention that, but we know that he couldn't have eaten leavened bread, or he would be breaking the commandment for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then Yahusha appears in the midst of the disciples at Jerusalem. And this takes us to Luke 24:36. We just finished Luke 24:35. This is the next verse. As Clopas and the other disciples spoke, Yahusha himself stood in the midst of them and said to them, Shalom Aleichem. They were terrified and afraid and supposed that they had seen a spirit. He said to them, Why are you troubled? Why do these thoughts arise in your hearts? Behold my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Handle me and see. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see me have. When he had spoken, he showed them his hands and his feet. They were beside themselves with joy, and they wondered beyond belief. Then he said to them, Do you have any food? They gave him a piece of broiled fish and some honeycomb, and he took it and ate it before them. Then he said to them, These are the words which I spoke to you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled which were written in the Torah of Moshe, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me. So he had to fulfill the Psalms, even the Psalms, the prophets. So this is our first fruits appearances and beginning to count the Omer. They all appeared together. That was the same day of the resurrection. That was the same, early Temiaton Sabbaton. Then the Emmaus Road appearance. And that, because it said that same day, which Luke 24:1 starts out with that, Temiaton Sabbaton. And then we skip over to John 20 verse 19. Again, then the same day at evening, being Temiat Sabbaton. being Temia Sabbaton. It's translated as the first day of the week into English, but it's literally the one of Sabbaths. The one of Sabbaths. That's the literal translation. It doesn't have anything to do with week. It's the word Sabbath. Temia Sabbaton, that same day at evening when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled. So they're assembled. Makes perfect sense if it was Sabbath indeed. For fear of the religious leaders, Yahusha came and stood in their midst and said, Shalom Aleichem. When he had spoken, he showed his hands and his side to them. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Master. Yahusha said to them again, Peace be to you. As my Father has sent me, even so send I you. When he had said this, he breathed in deeply and said to them, This is how you will receive the Ruach Kodesh. Whoever's sins you remit, they are remitted to them. And whoever's sins you retain, they are retained. Now Thomas, one of the 12, also called Didymus, was not with them when Yahusha came. So Thomas, or doubting Thomas, he wasn't there on this Temia Sabbaton, or Temiaton Sabbaton. Thomas isn't there. But that same day, he's being inspected. Mark 16:14. Afterward, he appeared to the 11 as they sat at dinner and scolded them for their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they did not believe those who had seen him after he was risen. So we basically see a very quick assembly of the disciples and the appearance of Yahushua HaMashiach after the resurrection. They're assembling. They're still in Feast of Unleavened Bread. Very possibly they're assembled for the weekly Sabbath, which he resurrected on, or just before it began. Then what's going to happen? So what takes place? In my mind, what I see is Yahusha is going and he's making these appearances. These are the Omers. He's gleaning these Omers. He's bringing all the disciples together. He's showing them, I'm here, I'm alive. He's getting these first fruits, these Omers that he's gleaning, and he's showing them that this is real. This is the real deal. I have fulfilled this. So this is of sorts a harvest of the Omers, is what I see Yahusha fulfilling during this time. And he's talking to them about, this is how you will receive the Ruach Kodesh, the Holy Spirit. So we get to John 20, verse 25. We just finished John 20, 19 to 24. Now, verse 25. The other disciples said to Thomas, We have seen the Master. But he said to them, Except I shall see his wrists, the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. And then he shows the 11 disciples go into the Galilee, Matthew 28:16. Then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee, into the mountain where Yahusha had ordained them. So they go away from Jerusalem. They've finished the Feast of Unleavened Bread. They can leave Jerusalem. They go to the Galilee, into the mountain where Yahusha had ordained them. And then we're going to get to John 20:26, where it's going to tell us, after 8 days, his disciples were indoors and Thomas was with them. So I don't know entirely the significance of this after 8 days, but basically he had his first appearances to them when they were assembled. It was, we know, te miaton sabbaton. So if we count after 8 days, which we know that the Sabbath is always the 7th when we're in the count, so perhaps this was the first fruits Sunday. If they were keeping first fruits on the 26th day of the first month, as we see in the Dead Sea Scrolls calendar, that would make sense. You would have te miaton sabbaton, they were gathered Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, and you know, if you include the Sabbath too, depending on how you count it. But after 8 days, it says, his disciples were indoors and Thomas was with them. Then Yahusha came, the doors being shut, and stood in their midst and said, Shalom Aleichem. Then he said to Thomas, press your finger in here. Look, here are my wrists. Reach your hand in here and thrust it into my side. Be not faithless, but believe. Thomas answered and said to him, Adonai, my Yahweh. Yahusha said to him, Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. And then we see Matthew 28:17. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. They worship him. So possibly a final inspection, possibly on first fruits. If they possibly assembled Saturday when he resurrected, I'm just saying maybe. I don't know if there's any significance to the 8 days, but it would have been right at the first fruits time, Dead Sea Scrolls calendar. And go ahead and read this footnote. It says, on Shavuot, Kepha exclaimed, quoting Psalm 110, therefore let all the house of Israel know assuredly that Yahweh hath made this same Yahusha, whom ye have crucified, both Yahweh and Messiah. That's Acts 2:29 through 36. And it says Lord and Christ in the English. He's made him both Lord and Christ in the English. He says here Yahweh and Messiah. This is the title of authority and honor given to Yahusha by his father Yahweh, which was prophesied by Zechariah 14:16 through 21. When the Messiah, as Yahweh Sevaot, or the Lord of hosts, rules from his millennial throne in Jerusalem. When Yahusha asked the Pharisees why David in Psalm 110:1 called the Messiah Adonai, then called him Yahweh in verse 5, the religious leaders were flummoxed and dared not ask him another question. So Zechariah clearly says that Yahusha would, his feet would touch the Mount of Olives, his feet would stand on the Mount of Olives, and he would be declared Yahweh Sevaot. He would have that title as Yahweh Sevaot, as many prophecies show Messiah to be called Yahweh. Shaul confessed by the Spirit, no one can say that Yahusha is Yahuwah except by the Holy Spirit. 1 Corinthians 12:3. So that's, no one can say Yahusha is Yahuwah except by the Holy Spirit. Because why? You have to have the Ruach HaKodesh to understand the prophecies, to put it all together, that he would have the title Yahuwah Sevaot. Thomas recognized this. He said, "My Lord and my God," in the English. Thomas says, "My Lord and my God," when he feels, he inspects him. Much similar as, all the disciples, all his disciples had now inspected him. Similar as to how the priests might inspect the first fruits sheaf or Omer. And then we get to John 20:30. Truly many other signs did Yahusha in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this scroll, but these are written that you might believe that Yahusha is the Messiah, the Son of Yahuwah, and that by trusting him fully and obeying him completely, you might have life through his name. Thus the prophecy will be fulfilled as declared by the Almighty. This is his footnote here. I will raise up a prophet from among their brethren like unto Moses, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. Whoever will not Shema, hear and obey. Shema, it doesn't just mean hear, it means hear and obey. My words which he shall speak in my name, it shall come to pass that I will make diligent inquiry and pronounce judgment upon him. That's Deuteronomy 18:18. And we know that to be fulfilled, that he is that prophet, because in Acts chapter 3, it says that this prophet of Deuteronomy 18 was in fact Yahusha HaMashiach. It is not those who call him Lord, but those who hear and obey that will enter into the gate that leads to life. So, Shema. And he translates that as him fully, trusting him fully and obeying him completely. Shema. Then we get to John 21:1. Yahusha appears to his disciples at the Sea of Galilee. After these things, Yahusha showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and this is how he did it. Shimon, Kepha, and Thomas called Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana of the Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and two other of his disciples were all together when Shimon Kepha said to them, I am going back to fishing. They said to him, we will all go with you. They departed and immediately entered into a ship. That night they caught nothing. When the morning came, Yahusha stood on the shore, but the disciples knew not that it was Yahusha. He called out to them, young men, do you have any fish? They answered him, no. Then he said to them, cast the net on the starboard side of the ship, and there you will find fish. That is where they cast, and now they were unable to draw in the net because of the multitude of fish. Then the disciple who Yahusha loved said to Kepha, it is the master. Now when Shimon Kepha heard that it was the master, he girt his fisher's coat about him, for he was attired in only his undergarment, and he jumped into the water. The other disciples came in a small boat, for they were not far from land, but as it were 200 cubits, dragging the net with the fish. As soon as they came to the land, they saw a fire with fish laying on the coals and bread. Yahusha said to them, bring some of the fish which you have just caught. Shimon Kepha went over and drew the net to the land full of 153 large fish. Yet for as many as there were, the net was not broken. Yahusha said to them, "Come and dine." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" knowing that it was the Master. Yahusha then took bread and gave it to them, and fish likewise. This is now the third time that Yahusha showed himself to his disciples after he was risen from the dead. So here we have the third time, and he shows them, "With me you will be gathering many Omers, many fish." So the Omers, perhaps representative of the fish and fishing for men, that they would now have the full power and authority to go out and fish for men with the Ruach Kodesh, who would teach them in a new way the Torah and the commands, and that would give them renewed understanding, renewed sight, renewed ability to bring in the sheaves, bring in the Omers, bring in the fish,